WCLU news coverage of the 2020 general election is brought to you in part by HVAC Services.
Alexa, HVAC repair services, please.
Professional and friendly, great service and great products. If you want HVAC done right, go with HVAC Services.
Home of the same-day guarantee, with heating and cooling coverage on any brand at any time.
Welcome today to our program, Brian. We're glad to have you here at our studios today to talk a little bit about your candidacy for the Senate race for this area. But first, we want to welcome you, Brian Pedigo, to our program. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
Sure. So talk a little bit about your history. I know you have a bit of a history in the political arena here, running locally and some different things. And so talk about some things that you have been involved in the past and, of course, what you're involved in now.
Well, as you know, I'm born and raised here in Barron County. Went to Glasgow High School, graduated in 1991. I went to Western Kentucky University, graduated in 1998, history major, government minor. All my life I've worked either on the farm with my father or retail and factory. So I'm a blue-collar guy through and through. He farmed and also was a long-haul truck driver. And my mom retired Glasgow City School System, teaching 30 years. So again, never had a silver spoon to my face. Always, we were, we weren't poor, but we weren't the rich people either. So part of what has driven me in the politics is my grandmother was big in local politics in her day. She was on the Barron County School Board in the 70s to help get the big gym built. And she also worked with Wendell Ford and William Natcher and other various local campaigns. So I got to meet those gentlemen when I was young and just really felt the connection to politics and trying to represent people. Not politicians necessarily, but representatives of the people.
Sure, and from a young age, it sounds like you've had interest in the whole idea.
Beginning in 2000, people were telling me, quit talking about it, go do something about it. So in 2000, at the ripe old age of 27, I believe, I ran for the U.S. House. And my primary opponent happened to pass away during the primary, so I became the candidate for the office in the fall. And had a great time going around talking to people. And I can tell you this, from 2000 to now, the way things have just been politicized. It's more of a party versus party rather than idea versus idea and people versus people. And that disturbs me.
Sure. So we're talking a little bit about, the whole Senate race right now. And just for people to clarify that are listening, that is for the Kentucky Senate portion here for the state.
Yes, I'm
Senate.
running for State Senate District 9, which covers Allen County, Barron County, Simpson County, Metcalfe County, Monroe County, and Greene County. So
a pretty large area right there for sure.
6 fairly large counties, yes,
sure.
Sir.
But as you mentioned, you're from right here in Barron County, and you live here, work here, and that's kind of the significant part about this, I think. So let's talk about, we've, of course, heard from both candidates in respect to state rep, which is a smaller area, if you will, who they're representing. But as a Senate candidate, you're representing quite a large area here in the South Central region. So talk about what it's like campaigning in that. You're having to cover a lot of bases, and this year has been unusual for sure.
This has been the most difficult year because I'm the type of candidate, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on TV and different type of advertising and things like that. So I'm a person to person. I mean, I love going door to door, meeting people. I love going to all the events that communities have, the fish fries and the chili suppers and the festivals and all that. That's just great person to person. That way you don't have to worry about party and just that type of national stuff. Just meeting person to person. Speaking of that, Monroe County has been actually very receptive to me. I was a little bit, concerned with some of the counties I represent as being more rural, but once they know my history as I'm actually the first generation of my father's family who has not been a farmer, because it's hard to make a living at anymore. So going back at least to my great grandfather, when he was still alive until I was 9 years old, he was still farming, and then my grandfather took from him and daddy to him, but you just can't hardly do that. But I'm the only candidate in this race, I believe, that has a plan to help farmers. I'm the only person in this race that I think has a plan to help working people.
And you mentioned, the reception in Monroe County particularly. For the record, you are on the Democratic side
I am
of
a
it,
Democratic nominee, yes.
by party. And like you said, that's kind of been an interesting topic we discuss generally with Democratic candidates in such a red area, is that, sometimes it's just like, well, what's my chance? But it sounds like you have had good reception. So talk about, I don't want you to dive into necessarily why you're Democrat or versus Republican, but why would you say that because you're Democrat doesn't necessarily mean that you don't necessarily have the same, things that you would typically put on a conservative person's ideology list?
Okay. Well, I come from a split household, you might say. My mother and her side of the family were all Democrat. My father's side have all been Republican. And a little funny story, when I ran in 2000, a lot of my dad's friends came up and said, "Man, we helped you. We voted for you. We pulled that straight Republican ticket." And I thought, because everyone knew the Pedigos were basically a Republican family. But I tried to draw the best from both sides. There's good ideas are good ideas. I mean, it doesn't matter who comes up with them, what party. A good idea is basically a good idea. And that's what I try to do, is just try to take the best from both points of view and do my best with that.
Sure. You talked a bit about your plan for farmers. I know it's just a huge topic, especially for our region here and in the coverage area that you would be representing if you're elected. So talk about what you think you offer more for a plan and things you feel like you get achieved versus what your opponent has maybe completed or has not completed yet.
Well, recently we legalized hemp, and a lot of farmers have gotten onto that bandwagon. But I don't think the state has done much to help that plan along. They basically said, it's legal, here, go with it. But the agriculture department and the state legislature and even as far as the governor's office has not really done anything to foster growth in that. This is a new industry, and we need to help those new factories and stuff come along. My one idea was to have the agriculture department through Kentucky First, which has been a program for several years, help an entrepreneur, whether it be local or someone who's already invested in that type of stuff, come in, maybe build a processing plant so the farmers can grow it. It doesn't have to go very far. It can stay right here in this area, process it, maybe help another entrepreneur build a plant that makes paper products, and then have the state, say, give a 2 or 3 year contract to make paper, whether it be toilet paper, napkins, whatever, for the schools, for the prisons, for the courthouses. Give them a little kickstart, something to help them go. I've heard no one else mention anything like that.
Sure. Talking about, while we're still in that same arena there, typically we see among Democratic candidates, especially as it pertains to agriculture, we even go a step further with the legalization of marijuana, recreational. Is that something that you've spoken about? Is that something you support? What are your opinions on that?
I have spoke of it, and I think it should be legalized. Basically, it's no different than alcohol. In fact, in most cases, it's better for you. It doesn't give you the urge to want to go out and get wild and crazy. You mellow out. And I've had several friends in the military who try to acquire it for their PTSD. And it goes without saying that it should be legal. If you look at the state of Illinois, just to our north, they raised something over $140 million in the first few months that they had it legalized in sales. And I can guarantee you there were a lot of Kentuckians who went over and did that.
So extending out from agriculture now, obviously I'm sure there are some other ideas. I know that I've said this in all of these political interviews thus far. One idea, if you have a good solid plan for one idea, that seems to be better than having a plethora of ideas that ultimately means you get nothing done. So just curious, though, you talk about having plans for agriculture and farmers. Are there some other areas that you'd like to maybe dive into?
Well, sticking with the legalization of marijuana, that's how I want to help stabilize the pension programs. Like I said, my mom's a retired school teacher, and the last few years under the previous administration, there was a lot of things being talked about that scared her and a lot of her friends who are retired teachers. And I think the tax money, the revenue gained from the sales of marijuana would help stabilize her pension plan and the pension plan for the rest of the state workers, firefighters, police, etc. Secondly, term limits. Even when I ran for U.S. Congress, I've always said term limits. You have to get an influx of new blood. And sometimes I think people get in the office and it doesn't become part of helping people anymore. It becomes just getting reelected.
Sure.
So if you have a limited number of terms that you know you're just going to have, I think that becomes less of importance, and you can actually do the job that you're there to do, which is represent the people.
Anything that I didn't touch on today? I know there's a lot we could talk about, but just in this brief amount of time, anything?
Well, I'd like to finish up by saying that I'd ask for everyone in the District 9's vote. Party doesn't pertain to me as much as some people. I just want to go up and put the job back where it should be, representing people. And a good idea is a good idea, and I'll listen. I won't just listen, but I'll hear what you're saying. And I just want to bring fair and equal treatment to everyone.
We wish you the best this November, and thank you for participating today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brennan Crane, News Director for WCLU Radio. Thank you for watching this portion of our 2020 election coverage. Visit us at WCLUradio.com and online at Facebook and Twitter for the latest and breaking news updates.